Difficult. Women.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Woo.
Hey. Ha.
Giddy up.
I don't know. I don't know how to start
back.
a thing. Hello, welcome to listening to our podcast, Difficult Women. We're doing it all backwards. This over here is Katy.
Marie.
And Marie. It's Marie and Katy podcast.
I mean, we've been doing this podcast for how long and we still have no idea how to do the intro. It's fine.
the hardest part. It's the hardest part. How do you start a thing? How do you start a set? How do you start a pod? How do you start?
Right.
How do you start a date? I don't know.
I don't know. I get lots of drinks. That's Katy Frame. I'm Marie Cecilia Anderson. Difficult Women podcast is in yo ears, and I am so excited about today's episode.
Yes,
because it hits home. It hits home.
It does hit home, and maybe it will hit home for some of you from all sorts of different perspectives. You know, like we're definitely looking from it from more of like the single/dating perspective, but I think a lot of you all will resonate with this in many different ways, and we always are so hedging around the topic, but let's just say what it is. And it's about dating people with children.
That's right. So have you dated people with children?
Yes,
I have. Cut to it.
I've dated a couple people with children. One person I dated, they had one young child.
How young? Or
maybe like
baby.
3
baby
or so. Not a baby,
okay,
but close. 3-ish, preschool age. And then there was another guy I dated who was much older than me, and he had 3 kids between the ages of 6 and 11.
Wow.
And in both cases, and I dated him for like 6 months. But in both cases, I never met the kids, which I was very glad about because in both cases, I mean, obviously I'm not with them now. So I don't know. But it was definitely something like when it came up, you were like, oh, yeah, this is like a thing.
3 children.
Oof. 3 children. And he was older. He had been living his life for a while. So he's entitled to have 3 kids.
Right. Huh. I've actually never dated anyone. I've gone on a couple first dates with people with children. And then I don't know what happens. Maybe the date doesn't go well, but in my mind sometimes, and this makes me sad, but I will talk about the band, Reformed Whores, and I fear sometimes maybe some of these men have gone home and like Googled me, and they are like, they don't want this feminist to expose her wild beliefs to their young children or something. I don't know. That's only happened once or twice. So like, who knows what really happened, but I didn't hear back from the people
it's definitely,
children.
I've thought about that too. It's definitely a possibility, but you also kind of just be like, you know, we are who we are too. So,
yeah. And that's not my person then. But I used to be totally against dating people with kids because I wanted my own family and my own children. And I didn't, I mean, I guess it's just selfishness, but I think that, you know, I didn't want them to have like another child before our own or something. And that mentality was when I was younger in my 20s or something. But
and now that I'm
desperate, older and I'm
lower bar. No, just kidding.
Yep, lowering
just
the
kidding.
bar. No, but it's just like more men, you know, have children. And
yes,
so
absolutely.
It is hard to navigate through that. So
there's so many like layers to it, and it's cool. We're gonna get to talk to our friend, an anonymous friend, about her experiences. Yeah, currently dating someone with children and how she's navigating it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, right now in the studio we have an anonymous source who is currently dating a man with a kid.
Dun, dun, dun.
Make it sound so ominous.
yes. Secrets. You're going to reveal the secrets of the childbearing.
But just because she's in a new relationship, we don't want to, we
don't want to fuck things up too much.
Yeah, basically.
For her.
So a dear friend of mine is sitting right next to me, and we're going to just dive into what it's like dating a man with a kid, and hopefully our listeners can get some tips on it, because at a certain age, when you're dating, both of us have been experiencing the older you get, the more
kids
baggage. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, welcome.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to be here.
So, have you ever dated a man with a kid before?
I did date a man with a child before, but it was very brief. And I actually, which I think is an important thing about dating a man with a kid, because I would say tip number one, meeting the kid is a very, very big deal. And I was dating this man and I liked him, but I just didn't see a future for us. I just knew he wasn't really going to be my long-term person. And so, and I guess I'll just add part of that was because he was really into adult Disney World, and that just really scares me. So there were some red flags.
Wait, adult Disney World?
Like he liked
meaning
to vacation there by himself as an adult with his family. Yeah, so, anyway,
Sorry, I was just gonna say I do think there is like an adult Disney, or there used to be Pleasure Island. That was in the 90s.
Yeah,
okay, never mind.
No, he had all the points and all the cards and regularly went multiple times a year, and his extended family. Anyway, so he was not my person, but he had a kid, and he did feel strongly about me, and it was starting to reach the point where he wanted me to meet his kid, and I just knew that since he wasn't going to be in my future, I should not involve myself with meeting his child.
So very responsible.
Ended up breaking things up. I wanted to, and it was just the right time because I didn't want to get involved with her. So that was my first experience. But this is my second and by far the more serious one. And I am really interested in this man, and he's wonderful and perfect for me in a lot of ways. And so I am really putting in the work to navigate and learn what it's like to date a man with a child that I'm invested in.
Have you met the children of this man?
I have. So we met. Yes. And so that was a big deal. Like I was saying, I think, I just think, when you're dating and that starts to, come up as something that will be in the future, it's just, I took it really seriously because you're starting to expand her world. Well, he has a daughter, so I was looking at it a lot as it'll be expanding her world and asking her to bring someone new in and trust someone new, and it's just something that I didn't want to take lightly. And I was really nervous about the meeting, which I think is obviously not a weird way to feel. I was very anxious about meeting her, but really excited because he had done a great job of sharing her with me prior to us meeting through sending me pictures. So we talked about her a lot, and I had a good sense of who she was. So it was exciting to finally meet her. And it went really, really well. But it's also something that I think is being paced at we're pacing it at a nice rate, because we had this initial meeting and then it was a few weeks before I hung out with her again. It didn't just happen. It wasn't like suddenly we meet and now we're spending all our time together.
Right. You don't have to tell me the exact age, but is she below 10 or above 10?
Yes, she's below 10. She just turned 8.
Oh,
I know. It's a really cute age, because I feel like it's a fun age. Yeah. If you're a teenage, that's just can be challenging. It's
I bet. Yes.
A lot more moodiness to contend with, a lot of opinions. And really, really young, I think I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it. I think it could also be great, but I think that also has a lot of challenges where you're really, would be stepping into a lot of, toddler parenting is very different.
Sure. God, could you imagine?
Yeah, it's just a really fun age.
And did you know before you went on a date with him, you met him on a dating app?
I did.
As we all do these days.
On Hinge, yep.
But on his profile, did he say he had a child, or so you knew straight up?
Yep. Yeah.
That's great.
And it's interesting because I'm 39, and I, dropped I love that little piece of tuna in the dating pool, dropped myself back in and at 39 and was like, okay, let's see what's out here. And as Marie said, when you reach a certain age, it's really interesting, because the last time I was on a dating app, I was in my mid 30s and I didn't set my age before 40. And I was, it was just a lot less. That wasn't so much an option with men in that dating age range. But when you get above 40, which I had set my range to 50 this time.
Whoa.
Yeah, looking for those silver foxes. But there was a lot more. That was a big part of the package was kids. And he did say that. He said has kids. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm interested in dating someone with kids. So it was definitely I considered that when I swiped as a positive thing.
Because I've been talking to some people, and they do not have it marked that they have children, and then they'll just drop it like several, texts back and forth about their kid, and I'm like, okay, you gotta lead with.
I think you have to lead with that. I really do. Yeah, it's a big thing.
I was gonna say, I did go on a date with this guy one time who did not say he had kids, and then he disclosed he had a kid on the date, but it turned out his kid was like 35 years older. He was
How old was he?
No, his kid was like, he was like a little older than me, but he had a child very young.
Like when he was 13?
I mean, like when he was like 16 or something.
Wow.
So his kid was like 20 or something crazy. So I was like, okay, I guess it doesn't affect me then, like almost at all. Which is anyway, side note.
Is your son single?
Yeah, exactly. I honestly, like, that's more concerning. It's like, am I going to be attracted to your child?
No, I think if the child is obviously under 18 and living in there, and there's co-parenting, and if the child is in this person's life, they should disclose that up front. Because as I've come to learn, I even went in, I would say, somewhat naively. And as we've gotten more serious and as it's become, as I've gotten more involved, there's just things that I wouldn't have anticipated, which I'm sure we'll talk about on this podcast, feeling and experiencing, both in the very much pros category and also just some, I wouldn't even say they're cons, but they're just like new waters I'm navigating in dating. So I think, it's something you have to really think about it when you are starting to get to know someone, if that's what you want to take on.
Yeah.
Right.
So what are some of the pros?
I think this is great. Number one is just seeing your partner as a father.
Yes, I would say that's such a pro.
Hotter. Like in Brooklyn, oh my God, like I'd see a man with a baby. Like a hot, and I'd be like, okay, where's the ring? Are they single? Are they? Oh no, they're married. They're always married with like a brownstone. But there's always going to be that one guy. There's nothing more attractive than a man who has their shit together. And I mean, of course, there's lots of fathers who don't have their shit together, but it must be very attractive to watch a man maneuver being a father, especially to a young girl, I think would be, I don't know.
No, it is a huge, huge pro. And he is an amazing father, I can say without a doubt. I mean,
so hot.
And yes, and it was so fun because I found myself, as we were getting to know each other, just so excited when he would share a text with me about something that he and his daughter were doing, if they were like, having a play date or reading. And I was just getting to see him in the virtual space was so exciting that I was longing to know what that would be like in real life, IRL, to see him just, just being so present and engaged with her, and they have a beautiful relationship. And so I found myself hungry to witness that, and it's been really fulfilling to see it.
That is beautiful.
In person.
That's
that is
cool.
Definitely a pro.
Yeah. I think the other pro for me would be like, I'm still like, do I want kids? I don't know if I want kids. But if you end up with that person forever, you get to be a part-time mom.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I would say
if they're not like a full-time father, but if they're a part-time father, you get to be a part-time mom. I'm like, yeah, that sounds great.
Totally. And I'm really navigating for myself. I mean, I do want kids. I've always wanted kids. I'm not sure if, that's for me personally in my future to bear my own. So this was also something I was considering at 39 and dating is, there's this like mothering adjacent role that I could take on, where dating someone with a child could be really fulfilling. It's like a third way that I hadn't seriously considered. She doesn't need another mom. I'm not looking to be her mom. That's big one. Right. I would say that's a big tip to remember, because that's important. But, to be able to have a relationship with a child, with someone that you are in relationship with, that you build your own special relationship with that kid. And it's a way of having kids in your life and having this kind of adjacency that I thought would be really, really fun.
Well, that was number 2 pro of just like being able to develop a nice relationship with the child.
Yeah.
Number 3, though, I think this is funny. And this is from like a stepmom podcast that I was listening to. But they said children make you a better person, which I'm like, sure.
Depends on how bad of a person you were before, I guess.
That's true.
That's a good point.
But I mean, I'll tell you, it makes you can't be so selfish, just like children in general. Like you have to be able to put these kids first. And even if like, I can imagine in a scenario where you're dating some guy and then you made these great plans and you're supposed to do this thing, and then your kid has to be picked up early from school because he's sick, or his kid has to be picked up. You have to just be able to understand that like your plans are out the window. Like
totally.
The dad has to do for his child first, period. And like that could be hard, I think, in a relation. I mean, we'll get into the cons, I guess, but stuff like that. So that could make people better people if they were.
Yeah, that's true.
I was actually going to say, I mean, that's very true. I even found myself talking with my dear friend Marie here yesterday on a walk about this very issue, which is how we came to decide to do this.
Who are you? She popped out of the woods and was like, I'm dating a man with kids.
No, but we were talking about how in some ways the challenges that you do navigate, I have found myself really like ready to take those on because it feels like an opportunity to show up in a bigger way than I maybe even have in other relationships, you know, because there's, I think the possibilities, the pros, the real like rewards that you get from this can be really, really big. That it's been helping me flex some muscles in myself that I think, while it can be hard, are also really good ones to flex, like patience. You know, we'll get into some of the pros, but that has been a big one for me, just really developing patience and understanding, you know, how you do have to kind of put yourself aside and realize that you're in this with a lot more people and your needs are not always going to be first. And like, a selflessness, which just developing those qualities is a really good thing. It makes you feel good when you lean into that. And sometimes, so that can help you show up in a bigger way, I think.
Well, I was just going to say that I think that it's also probably doubly hard when you're first starting out. And so the person that I mentioned earlier, one of the things I remember was like, he'd have to get up early and drop his kid off at school every single day. The kid didn't live with him, but he had to wake up and he was the responsible one for getting him to school. So like that meant I had to wake up early. And I was like, fuck this. I was like, what's going on here? But then you realize like, okay, I think the other thing about it is it makes you go like, how much do I like this person?
Yes.
Like how much do I want to be in this with this person? Because like in my case, I was like, this isn't, I mean, it wasn't that it wasn't for me. It was that it made me realize that this person may not be for me. You know what I mean? The scenario was fine. He was doing exactly what he should have been doing. But I was like, do I want to wake up at 6 a.m. every morning for him? And the answer was no.
Well, let's get into the cons and I do think when I say cons, I think that we can reframe them and make them positive. But I think that this is, again, like just maneuvering through dating a man or a woman with a child, just anyone with a kid, because I've also been talking to another friend of mine who has a kid and he's actively dating and just hearing from a man's perspective too, of how like he had it was kind of sad. He like planned to have a date with this girl. He had to get a babysitter. The babysitter came. He was like ready for the date and then his date canceled. I was like line up a babysitter and then so it's just like understanding the nuances of how much it takes to, you know, go on dates and stuff when you do have children. Anyway, first con that comes up is that you will never be his main priority. Right. Because that's actually to just switch it. It's like, that's great. Because the child should be his first priority.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what makes him a good man.
Yeah.
You're like, I want this quality in you.
Right.
But it is challenging. And I would say that's been something that has definitely been new for me. That was probably the biggest like, whoa, okay, this is what this feels like when yeah, I mean, you will be his priority sometimes. It's not that you won't be. And so that can feel really nice and especially can feel it's an even bigger feeling when you see him kind of making a choice to prioritize you in a moment. You're like, oh, wow, this is like sometimes harder even for you to do and you're choosing to do it. And that feels really good. But yeah, then you will never be the number one priority and you shouldn't because that's absolutely where his child should sit.
Mm-hmm. All right. So number 2 con of dating a person with kid is the baby mama drama.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh! I mean, of course. You want to be respectful, obviously, because that is the mother of the child. But then you also are maneuvering where you fall into like the relationship as well. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard because one thing I've been challenged by or just been having to, you know, grow into is that, like when you break up with someone and they don't have a kid, and then you that's like a no-go zone. Like, you should not have contact with your ex. If you're dating someone and they're, still texting their ex constantly, it's like, wait, what's going on? This just doesn't feel right. So you really have to shift. And that's been something, and my partner and his ex have a really, really healthy relationship. It's a total 50-50 co-parenting.
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And I respect them immensely for it. And because they have that kind of intentionality around parenting, they're in touch all the time because of their daughter. And he was really helpful in saying, I think this is going to help you a lot when you begin to make the shift from seeing her as my ex to seeing her as my daughter's mom, and seeing her just in that role, which I think was really, really helpful. And it has been, a growing edge, I would say, for me, to remember that, and just remember, when he's receiving these messages all throughout the day, it's because, he has to.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes there are situations where the relationship wasn't resolved well, and the relationship between the parents is not very good, and they still they're trying to figure out how to be co-parents. And then when another person comes in, I know that can be really hard then. For everybody in that situation, including the kids. So that's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I think one thing that's helped me remember, and has also helped me just get some perspective is, I'm not really dating one person. I'm dating 3 people. And there's other people in this that I am in my own way developing relationships with each of them, and then thus with me. And so that reminder has just been really important for me to consider, that, and like we were talking about at the beginning, it's requiring some flexing of some of these muscles of like a certain selflessness or a certain kind of awareness that you're not like the only person in the room. Like, it's not just you and your partner. You have these other, actors that you really have to
and it's not even just you, your partner, and the kid. It's you, your partner, the kid, that kid's mother, maybe that kid's stepfather, maybe that's, that kid's grandparents from both sides. I mean, like, it really is a big thing. It kind of makes me want to go back just to that idea too of like, if you're dating someone with a child and you're trying to push to meet the child quickly because you think it's going to do something for your relationship with this person, like, the amount of people that choice affects is bigger than in this moment. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, it's going to, because even the mother of that child is going to have feelings about you meeting their child. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Or the father of that child meeting, that child. So it's like, it's a lot. But it's great. This is wonderful, but...
I would also say another tip, if possible, and I did this, and I think it was really, really, I think it was a good way to operate, is in terms of meeting the child. Like, this was new for me. Like I said, I dated one other person, but really didn't have much experience in this arena. I really, really liked this man as I was getting to know him. So I saw the possibility of a partnership, a longer term partnership. So I did obviously want to meet his child, but just to not be the one that's pushing that. Like, I think in the role of the new partner, I mean, maybe if it's gone on for like a year and you haven't met the child, maybe, or even, I mean, there could be a time frame in which you do have to say, well, wait a second, why have I not, if we're still together? But in the early stages, as they're navigating what it's going to be like to introduce a new person into their family, because that's the other reminder, he has a family. Like, however things play out with us, we'll develop our own kind of family, as a new unit, but he has a family, and that family is really important, and that family has to be preserved and considered. And so just not pushing, I really kind of just operated as like, I'm letting this be directed by you guys. I'm following your lead. It's the pace that makes sense for you and your family. And then kind of really just stepping back. And then as the trust builds, you realize that, to have a more hands-off approach in the beginning builds a lot of trust to be able to have a little more hands-on as things develop. Or you just, as my partner put it, which was a really kind way to say it, he's like, you're getting a seat or you have a seat at the table now. So you're at this table, and it was very validating, and it really honored, like, you have feelings about this, and I want to know what those feelings are. And like, you should voice them, and you should feel comfortable. But I do think in the beginning, it's best to have more of a hands-off approach and let the pace be, like, to kind of step back, because you need to build that trust. in the first meeting of the child, I was nervous, like I said, but excited. And it's like, there's kind of a, you want to make a good impression. We always want to make good impressions. And so it's, I was joking, of course, not coming laden with gifts. Don't do that. Like just anyone that needs to hear it. Like, of course I was kidding that I would do that. But, the bigger picture here, or the bigger point here is just really almost go in with no expectations. I would say like, don't even go in with low, just kind of go in with no, just try to keep it as casual as possible. Cause you have no idea you're really trying to center yourself with the child and what this is going to feel like for them. And they may want to, they may not want to talk to you. They may be like, I'm nervous about who this person is, a complete stranger that's, talking to my dad now. And, or they may be excited and they may want to be super chatty and playful, but just to not take it personally, just to be able to go in and say, this is just a casual meet. Like, here we are. We're just going to hang out and however it goes, just roll with it and try to leave with as little personal insult if it didn't go the way you wanted it to. Just it's again flexing those muscles of the selflessness. Like you don't get to control this situation and you may leave feeling disappointed or whatever. I personally, thankfully, had a great experience and I felt really lucky for that because it did go very well and it was a really lovely play date. But I think I went in with very, very low expectations and I think that paid off.
That's really good. I just want to add to, again, like from the framing of the children's perspective, like you really don't know. You've never met this child and you don't, and maybe even the parent can tell you as much as they can, but like you don't know how that child is processing the divorce.
Absolutely.
Because I think that's part of like what this whole thing can be. It can be a wonderful celebratory thing where you're bringing more family into the situation, but can also be like traumatizing in the sense that like if that child was very upset by the divorce situation, you're the bad guy coming in to potentially, not always, but potentially. So like I think that's excellent advice is to don't try to force the kid to like you. Don't try to force, and I know kids can easily come around too if you are having a bad experience.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that first experience writes the narrative for the relationship.
100%.
Not by any stretch of the imagination.
100%.
But it's a really good, it's the starting point, and it's just good to be able to really do the selfless work and center yourself with what this child is going to have a whole experience around this. And in this particular case, it's not really about me in this first meeting,
For sure.
It's very mature. It sounds like
I feel like I'm a real grown up now, guys.
Well, it is interesting because, in our 20s and I was just such a mess with relationships and things would get so messy and things would affect me so easily and my feelings would get hurt and stuff. But like with this conversation and just being grown up, there's a lot of like confidence that you have shown up with. Like you're secure with yourself, you love yourself, and we talk about this all the time. When you love yourself, you draw in the positive, you draw in good people who are attracted to that, but also that you're able to just prioritize what is safe for you and that you trust yourself, and that just, I think, just makes for better relationships. And I don't know, we should all love ourselves and then attract people who also love themselves, and we can all just hold hands and fucking kumbaya.
I think the confidence and self-worth piece is really important. I really do. And I'm glad. I mean, I think we're always on this journey. Like I'm always, wanting
There's always more work to do.
There's always more work to be done. I am by no means like I am so much a work in progress. But I have over the years of having different relationships and having, gone through those journeys. I have seen, myself grow, and it has been a growth process, and it feels good. Having the confidence and the self-worth is important because, like we said in the beginning, you're not his number one priority. Mm-hmm. And so if you're feeling like there's places where you could be insecure about not feeling like, he can prioritize you or that you matter, you just have to have that well within yourself to know that you do, and to know that, you're worth showing up for, and that he's making space in his life for you, which is a really big deal. And that is a big testament to to feelings about how he feels about the relationship, and that you are making space in your life for him. You could go the easier route in some ways and not date a man with kids. Maybe that would be easier. But going the route of saying, I'm going to lean into these challenges, it's like you have to have that, I guess, the confidence to say that is
and that
important.
partner has to be worth it too.
Exactly. And you have to have the confidence to say, you're worth it for me. I know that you're worth this because this is what I want, and I want you.
I think also it's a really good test, and we talk about this in the pod a lot too, is it's a really good example of like how important boundaries are. Because you also have to, you have to understand that they're going to have their boundaries around their kids and their situation with their exes and things like that. But then also you got to work on your own boundaries and how much, what are you going to put up with? And I think on the, of course, you're, like we said, you're going to have to deal with this like balance of like, you're not always put first and those kinds of things. But where then do you need to be put first, and where do you need to, and it's funny what you said about like, if someone doesn't want you to meet their kids after a year of dating, maybe they're not serious about you. You know what I mean? Like there's gotta be, you have to be really honest with yourself and what do you want? Maybe this casual thing with this guy who doesn't want you to meet his kids is fine. But you just have to be really, really honest about what you're looking for and like what they want. And like you got to be able to communicate, I think, even more in these scenarios, because again, like other people are involved in this situation. So it's interesting.
So I think another tip that's really important, just think for those of you out there listening, and this is something that obviously I think you hear a lot about and read about, but just in terms of parenting, really letting the parents do the parenting and trying as much as possible to step out and well, it kind of goes to what we were talking about before with just building trust. I mean, I think the thing that's been really interesting for me in this experience is the patience and the trust building just really has to happen. I think there's a point in time down the line when that trust has firmly been built and you have a really solid relationship with the child and you're in more of a step parent role where obviously, you can have opinions and maybe weigh in if you're asked on like some, parenting situations. But in these early stages, which I think is what I can speak best to right now, since that's where I am, just really stepping back and letting the two primary parents be the parents and do the parenting that needs to be done and just not treading into those waters.
Yeah. That's really good advice, I think. And that's good advice too for like, they always say like, don't tell parents how to parent even outside of a relationship. You know what I mean? When you see something, it's like people shame, mom shame people and stuff. You don't know what it's like to be that mom or dad. And that dynamic. So I think that's excellent advice. I would also say, I think one thing that can be really hard to being the outside person coming in, especially when the kids are little, is that sometimes you do see parenting behavior that you're like, this is not what I would do at all. I think that could probably be a hard thing to navigate. But I think overall, you're probably right that like you just need to stay out of it because you don't know. It's going to get real messy. Interesting. Good point.
Well, the last con is, and I think that this can hurt, I think. But also, again, with the right partner, you just maneuver through it. But that is that you will never experience having a first child together. Which is like, I mean, if you want children, a child of your own, and I mean, you're welcome to speak personally about it, or we can just generalize it because it is a very sensitive thing. But I think that just hearing you talk about how like he does have his family and you're respectful of that, but then just, knowing if you also want to have your own child and that sort of thing, just, being honest and upfront about that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways that I think as I've gotten, and I will speak personally and just say, I do want children. I've always wanted children. And so, yeah, I mean, it's one of those, I've thought about that. It's crossed my mind many times. And I think the truth is sometimes there's things in life, there's sometimes a weird beauty and power in not always getting what you want, and that is something that I will never experience with him, having a first child together. And so you just kind of, there's like a just leaning into acknowledging that there's some grief around that, or there's some hurt around that, and that it's okay to feel that. It's okay to say, oh, that's a missing experience that I wish I could have, but I'm not going to have it with you. It's okay to feel sad about that and to just lean into that sadness.
Yeah. That also makes me think that one thing I see on the apps a lot with people that have children I think this is another thing you have to be super in good communication with if you're starting to get serious in these relationships. A lot of people will say, I have kids and I do not want more.
Right.
So so be careful that you're not going into something being like, oh, well, I can change their mind. Or it's like, they know what kids are like.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's not like when I don't have kids. So like, you can kind of be like, I don't know, kids, maybe, whatever. It's like, I think those people more than ever, you got to believe it when they say, I don't want more kids, you know?
And that was a big thing personally, because, you know, like I haven't really figured out, like I'm still in a lot of unknowns about what that will look like for me personally. And I will say I was I was ruthless with that. It would say, you know, has kids, open to kids. And that's what I felt comfortable swiping on. If it said has kids, don't want more, I was like, you know, I'm not ready to fully close that door. I'm just going to move on.
No, it's not.
It's not worth it.
No, it's not worth it. Actually, this is a side note, but I thought this was kind of a cool thing because, you know, those relationship statuses, like I take those very seriously on dating apps. And this one guy, he didn't have anything up there, but mine says like looking for something serious. And I matched with this person. We were like totally hitting it off and texting. And then eventually he was like, it looks like it says that you are looking for something serious. Like, is that a deal breaker? Because I'm not. And I was like, yeah, it's it. And then that was it. And I was like, and I appreciated that. It's just like, what are we trying to do when you're meeting up with people that you're not, just some of these basic things are not in alignment.
Well, I felt duped recently. I had a date and I met the guy who's very nice. He's just in town for like 6 months on like a contract job.
Oh,
and I was
annoying.
like, that should be on your profile because I am
what a
looking
waste
for
of
something
your time.
serious. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm going to drink this beer that you just bought me and goodbye, sir.
Yeah.
But I did feel duped in that sense. Just, we got to be more honest with human beings.
We just got to communicate.
And I think in terms of this, like this whole thing with transparency that we're talking about, it just feels even more important when children are involved. So whatever it's going to be, whether you have to be transparent that you have them. That's probably the number one thing. You have to be transparent if you don't want more. You have to be transparent if you do. You just have to be the communicate. I mean, and then you can roll in. Just communication just gets so much more important when you have children in the picture, I think. And it can also be a really good litmus test for, you know, for the potential for partnership, because if the communication around any of this is haphazard or sideways or feels wonky, then you're like, okay, this is not going to be something I want to step into, because to be in a relationship with a man with children, I think you have to have excellent communication, even more so than not. There's so much more to talk about. There's so much more you have to navigate. So if you can't communicate well, having that added layer of a child and that part of that piece of the puzzle, it just makes it so much more important to be able to talk well and talk honestly and talk openly and get out ahead of stuff.
Yeah. So I have another con.
Okay, go for it.
Okay.
Which is also from personal experience, but not in the way you would expect in this conversation. Another con could be that the children or the child hate you.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I'm familiar with that from being on the child side. Where my mom started dating someone and I did not like him. And I made his life a living hell.
What did you do, Katie?
Well, he was like weirdly living in our house. It was really the way that my mom kind of handled it was not good. So that did not help the scenario at all. But so they were like kind of pretending they weren't dating. But he was like living in we had like a room in the basement that he was living in. It was weird. And then, and they weren't being really upfront with me about it either. So also, by the way, people with children, like be upfront with your children about the dating and stuff like that, because it got real fucked up in that sense on my end. But also like, I just didn't like him. And some of the things that I did was I spit in his pants, which was like a thing I thought was like mean to do. And then the other thing I did, which is like real Dennis the Menace of me, was I super glued the flaps in his underwear shut.
Oh my God, Katie. That is so Dennis the Menace.
Wait,
that's so perfect.
Did you understand that, like, how old were you?
I was like
high school?
8. I
Oh,
was
8.
like
Okay.
8 or
All right.
9.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I wasn't like a teenager. No, I was like a child.
I'm going to keep his dick inside his underwear.
I
mean,
mean,
the
he
metaphor
never said
there
anything
is
about
great.
it. I don't know if he noticed, or I don't know how those flaps work anyway. But like, yeah,
I mean,
I did that.
That would keep. Wow, that's brilliant. Good
That is
job,
brilliant.
Katie.
I just was like, so I mean, I think that like the other side of this conversation that I'm super familiar with is the child. You know what I mean? And like, and that there's not. I don't think there's like as much. There's not as well. I mean, there's things you can do as the extra person, like the step person. But I think also it's really important that the parents are communicating well with the children too, the actual parents of that child. And sort of, and I think also the other thing that can be really stressful on the kid is if you are a parent who is being really like angry about the new person coming in, that affects your child too. So for any of you who have children and you're sharing your child with your ex-partner and then, you know, a new date is coming through, you got to have good communication with that partner, but also like, you got to figure out how this is affecting the kids, because you being mad at your partner or whatever is hurting the kids too. So like you gotta, it's really important. I think that to me, the biggest moral to this story is that the kids have to come first in these scenarios.
Yep. Agreed. And I think
Because
that's
it really like,
important.
can fuck with the kids. Case in point.
Yeah.
Well, I think we did it. I mean, I think that we've provided all the tips for people
All of
to
them.
succeed.
There's nothing more to say. We are
nothing
now
else.
experts.
You are welcome. Yeah. We're dating disasters, but good luck to
we
you,
don't- yeah.
anonymous friend.
You're doing great. You're killing it.
You're killing it. But no, this is good. I mean, I really personally, like, I have been dating men with kids, and I it's hard. It's hard to maneuver because I
It's
like
new.
to be
It's
first. I want to
Yeah.
be the priority. So it's a good. It's a beautiful thing what you're doing, and I think like just patience and transparency and communication. You know, it's all very grown up of you, and I applaud you.
Aw.
So,
Yes.
good job.
Thanks, anonymous friend.
Yeah. If you too have experiences of dating people with children, or you, like Katie, super glued your mother's boyfriend.
Or also, if you are going through a situation where you were the one who's with the kids, we'd love to hear your side of your
Absolutely.
experience on this too.
Shoot us an email, difficultwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you and share your stories. So, well, again, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
pod.
you. This was so much fun. You guys are the best.
Thank you. And
Bye.
scene.
And scene.
Bye.